So welcome to the Just Our Imagination Challenge, where we have to craft out of some challenging items. And this video, it is a plastic shopping bag, an egg carton, and some doilies. They could have either been fabric or paper. So jumping right into the first craft, we are going to be using an egg carton, and I'm just going to cut off these excess pieces because I'm only going to be using the portion that the egg actually sits in. And I'm going to be using one other of the challenge items. So see if you can guess what that is before we get there. But you can see I'm just taking the scissors and I am cutting out each individual little cup. And it was easy just to take it and stab it down each side and then kind of slant my scissors up and go up the center there just to get a good cut. And then I went ahead and cut the sides just the same way. Now the way they make these egg cartons these days, there isn't a whole lot of the cup area down below, so I have to cut all of the excess pieces sticking up so that it's a smooth round circle. And like I say, this made my project a little bit smaller than I was going for, but they still turned out, and I'm just making sure I get all the little jagged pieces cut off. Now, if you haven't guessed what we're making yet, I am going to be making some flowers. Now, I have these cute little snips that I got at the dollar store, and I didn't have any little tiny scissors with pointed ends, but these cut through this like butter, so it was actually pretty awesome. And you see I cut a slit opposite sides of each other, and then the piece in the center, I'm breaking that down into thirds. And once I've done that, you can see my little petals. But now to make them more petal-like, instead of looking more like a little bit of a windmill with the squared edges there, I'm just taking my scissors and kind of starting in the center and then scrolling down onto one side. And I'm going to work my way around the whole flower doing this. And these scissors are a little bit bulky. I need to invest in a pair of smaller scissors. But once you get done with the first round of petals, you can see there, you flip it over and then you're still kind of basically going in the same direction. And then you start at the point again at the top and then just make a curve onto the other side, and that forms little petals for you. And luckily, this is pretty easy to cut through with a good sharp pair of scissors. It's just making sure you don't cut too much off. So there you can see we have a shape of a flower, and I'm going to cut out the rest of these and I'm going to proceed to make more. Now you see how I have some different shapes and sizes here, and I will show you how I make those. Here's some more that I cut out. Some have more petals than others. Some have 6, some have 8. And then the larger one that I had, you can see that there's 4 petals there. And this one, I have not cut the petals down on yet. But what I did, I'll show you how I made the large one. Instead of cutting off all those extra pieces to make the short little circle, I'm just cutting down in between each one of those pieces. And as I pull it open, you can see it makes a larger petaled flower. And then if you stack the two together, it kind of gives like a double effect, or you could use a smaller one if you prefer. I kind of like the larger one stuck together. And now I'm just going to do the same thing on the large ones, but the nice thing is there's not very much that you need to trim off of these to get them into the petal shape. And again, you're just going to flip them over, start at the point, and just round off the edges on the other side. And if my voice gets a little scratchy, I apologize. Everybody in my house is sick, and I just got over it and I feel like I'm getting it again. So 'tis the season, right? So there you see the flower. Here I'm just cutting out some more. I'm trying to use the snips to see if it works a little easier than the scissors. I don't know if it really did, but we're going to make a flower now, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to cut opposite sides of each other and then opposite sides of each other again. And then I'm going to cut in between all of those pieces. And this is what will give you your 8-petaled flower. Or is it 10? I can't remember. It gives you a lot. I think it's 8. But you're just going to cut the flowers the same way. You're going to do the edges. And you see how they end up a little bit smaller? And if you want to make another type of flower yet still, you can take your little snips or your scissors and you can just cut little slits down into each one of the petals And I chose to do this without curving the petal edges on these, but just leaving them as they were. And it just kind of gives another effect of a flower. You can bend these if you want them to not all be in the same spot. And so now what I'm going to do before I move on to another step is I am going to paint some of these flowers. Now I'm going to admit to you, I was not gifted with the artist gene in terms of drawing and painting. My aunt was, it skipped me, and all three of my children can draw and paint like you would not believe, but not me. But I'm just going to mix up some white and some red here because I'm kind of going for spring colors. I wanted to get a pink tone going on. And I'm just going to paint the petals on the inside. And then I also want to be sure that I get a little bit down on the inside rim of the center of the flower, get all of the edges painted. And I am going to be painting the back, but there's just no getting paint on your hands when you paint these like this, because there really isn't any just perfect way to hold them without touching paint once you get to the other side. Thankfully it's water-based and it washed off really easy. But you can see I'm just making sure I get all the edges. Once they dried, I will flip them over and do the backs. But I'm not going to bore you with my whole painting process. But once they dried, I deepened the pink a little bit, and I thought it would be pretty to have the throats of the flower a little deeper. And then I just took a brush and was kind of putting a little bit on the edges of the petals, try to give it a little more of a true looking flower effect. And I've seen some really pretty painting on these before. I got a drier brush just to try to make just to try to make the lines a little more streaky, like a flower in nature might be. And it did work pretty good. I had to rub some of the paint off so it wasn't too much. And it might be kind of hard to see, but it does look actually pretty. There, that's kind of a better view. And I'm going to deepen the throat with the pink some more. But some people, now if it wasn't spring flowers, you can put black in the center and then use a toothpick to pull the black out, and it makes some nice veining effects as well. But you can see I have these all painted. I kind of did different variations in colors, and I'm going to set these aside. Now we are going to be getting into our second challenge item, and if you guessed the the plastic shopping bag, you were correct. Now what I'm going to do with this is an older style shopping bag that I still had. It's a little bit thinner. The ones that we can get around here now, of course, we have to pay 5 cents for, and they are a thicker white plastic bag, and they are made to be reusable. But I really was glad that I had this one because it's thinner and it's going to accomplish the look that I'm after. Now you can see I just cut out a strip, and the strip is folded in half. So as I'm cutting these strips up, I'm not going all the way to the top of that folded edge. I'm leaving some room, and that is how I achieved that effect. Now I did realize that this one was much bigger than I needed it to be, so I'm going to cut it down. And thankfully that's going to cut most of the black writing off of here. There is plenty of space on this shopping bag where I could cut out many more without getting any black writing on them. But I realized that these little slits I had made too big as well. So I'm going to cut down the center of those. So it's just kind of a little frilly look like that. And then what I want to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it in half. And because it's a plastic bag and it is very slippery, I'm going to put some double-sided tape on the end there to keep them held together. And unfortunately, after I made this one, I ran out of my double-sided tape. But I'm putting one in the center as well to hold the center in place because, like I say, just wanted to slip around. It wasn't staying where I wanted. So now that it's folded in half and secured, I'm just going to continue folding it in half and folding it in half until I get it down to where it looks like this. And it's just a puffy little fluff of plastic. And I'm going to take some tape. This is not double-sided tape, it's just regular tape. And I'm going to take the whole folded end and I'm going to secure it with a piece of tape so it doesn't go anywhere. And I will fluff it out again. And these are actually going to be the centers of my flowers. Now I'm taking some of the flowers that I made and I'm kind of offsetting the petals on the base there, and then I'm going to glue this into the center. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. So I'll put a little bit of hot glue and tuck the other one right on top and get that held in there until it's dried. And then I'm going to take a little bit more hot glue to glue this down into the center. And now you do have to be careful because the hot glue will melt. And because I had no more double-sided tape, I am using hot glue on this bag. Now I very, very carefully just put a little dollop on there. And of course I got it stuck on my finger and glue strings are going everywhere. Typical glue gun story, right? But once I got that all done, I did the same thing, just using the hot glue. I got that taped into the center. And at first I was wondering if I wanted to put together, but for this little small size of a flower, it was just way too much. So I'm going to just stick with one. And I'm just going to put a little bit more hot glue in the center there. And I'm laying it down on its side so that I can get the glue to adhere to the base where I had taped it together. And then once I have that secured into place, I'm going to take a little bit more hot glue, and then I'm just going to pull from the center over and hold that down until it gets glued into place. And now you can see how I have this fluffy little center to my flower, almost like you see in nature. But I realized that this was a little bit longer still than I really wanted the center of the flower to be. So I took my scissors and I just clipped down. And let me tell you, because this is plastic and it was like staticky, it was clinging to everything. But you can see there's a little bit of the black writing left in there. I did end up trimming that off a little bit. Now this is the larger 4-petaled flower that I made, and I just wanted to see if I liked how large those were for that. I'm going to take 2 of those and again do the same process. I'm going to glue those 2 together. I really actually love these white flowers with the purple streaking in them. I think they turned out to be one of my most favorite color combinations. But I'm going to get those glued together, and I'm going to do the same thing with the center. I'm going to put a little bit of glue in there so I can put him in there. And then I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to need 2 for the larger flowers. So I ended up making another one. And then I will glue these 2 down into the center. And you can see I just love how it looks in the center there. I was thinking maybe to trim it down a little bit, but I think I just decided to leave it. It didn't look too bad. Now for the stems, this is something that I saw online, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it this way, but I thought I would give a couple of them a try. The first way was to cut a piece of paper on the diagonal and then start rolling it. And this is actually cardstock, and it was really difficult to roll because it wanted to bend because the paper was so thick. But once you get it to the point where you can't roll it too much more, you just trim it off and then glue the ends together. Now my second option, this is actually like little colored construction paper that you get for kids to craft with. And I just cut these in half and then started rolling them up. And I still found they were squishy, you know, they were almost opposite of the cardstock. Cardstock was too thick and hard, and this construction paper was too thin. But if you want to use these with kids and crafting and stuff, you just cut slits down opposite sides of each other so you have 4 pieces like this. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take some hot glue and you're going to glue it on to the flower like this. So it looks like the little portions of a flower that hold the stem and the flower together. And so now I have that glued. Not my favorite look. I'm going to tweak it a little bit later. But we're going to set that one aside. And I decided to try a different method, and I wanted to put a bamboo skewer down in the center. Of course, it was a little too thick at this point because I had already glued the center in, and also it just made it hard. So I used my scissors, and then as soon as I was able to get the skewer in there, put a little bit of hot glue in there, and then I stuck it down inside. Now the subsequent ones I did after this, I cut the tip of the barbecue skewer off because it helped them fit in there a little bit better. Now I went into my stash of fake flowers and I found some leaves. Hope was really to have the little hole that held all the leaves together to slide right onto the barbecue skewer, but of course the barbecue skewer was too thick, and so I had to cut them off. Now this is floral tape. If you have never used this before, it's kind of tacky. It's not super sticky, but to start, you just kind of wind it around, pinch it together, and then you start twisting it in a slight diagonal down the stem. And they make dark green and this lighter green, and I chose to use the lighter green because we're kind of going spring. And I just took one of the leaves and I'm winding that onto there. And then I went down just a few more twists, and then I put the other leaf on the other side. And I did this just so they weren't exactly opposite of each other. And then once I got those secured, I just kept winding down towards the base of the skewer. Now, in order to make the little pieces on the underside of the flower to make it look like a natural stem holding a flower on, I just took some green paint and I actually hand painted those details onto the bottom. And here's what they look like when they're done. I just arranged them in the vase. I mean, they're definitely crafted from egg cartons and a plastic bag, but I thought they turned out pretty cute for what they were. It would be a fun craft to do, and especially if you're an awesome painter, you could probably make prettier ones than I did. But it would also be a great project if you have little kids or grandkids around. I think they'd have fun doing that. So the Just Our Imagination Challenge is hosted by Kathy Jo's DIYs and Rustic and Lace DIYs. And you will see in the center, I was blessed to be the guest host this month. If we haven't met, hi, my name is Julie, and I have Small Farm Living, where I grow flowers and veg from seed, and I do gardening videos as well as crafting videos. Now, be sure to take a look down in the description box once this video is over, where you will find the links to the hosts' channels, as well as a link to the playlist for all of the amazing creators that are participating in this challenge. You don't want to miss what they're doing. Now, the last craft is the doily, and we're not quite at Valentine's Day since this is out the beginning of February, but I'm going to make a honeycomb heart hanging from these heart doilies. So the first thing you need to do is run a bit of glue stick down or across the center of the heart and fold it in half. And of course, because these doilies have holes all over in them, glue was getting on the table and it was making it a little difficult. And I was trying to be very careful because those little cutout pieces like to tear if you push the glue too hard. But I just made a nice big stack of those that were glued in half. And then the next step is you're going to take and put glue around just the top portion. And then about a quarter up from the bottom, you're going to make a line across. And again, trying to be very careful so I don't tear. You can see how easily they move. And then you're just going to start stacking them one at a time on top of the other and repeating the process. Put a strip of glue across the top and another one about a quarter of the way up from the bottom and laying another one on top. And it really is as simple as that. I'm not going to bore you with the whole process, but I'm just kind of showing you how easy it is to tear these little paper doilies. They are really fragile. And then once I worked my way through the whole stack and got those all glued together, I put a weight on it on the top where I had glued them and as well as on the bottom, and I let that sit for about 5 minutes. Then what we need to do is make a hanger, and I'm just going to show you how the honeycomb kind of is starting to look here. Very pretty and fun. Unfortunately, some of them kind of stuck to each other because of the glue and how many holes were in this paper. I had to go through and kind of hand take those apart. But we're just going to measure a piece of string, give it a little cut, and then we are going to run some glue down the spine for that string to adhere to. Get it put on there like that. And I probably would have glued a little bit more of the spine together before I did this because it didn't stay together like I wanted in the center. Couldn't tell 100% at the very end, which you will see. But now you just want to glue the whole outer rim of that heart on the one side, and then you're going to lift up and keep a hold of it here, and then we're going to press those two sides together. I'm going to give it a pinch all the way down so that the glue adheres, and you can see the fun honeycomb look. And then I took a little bit of hot glue and I just put it around the base and pinched it together so it kind of held all of those points at the end. And this is what it looks like when it's hanging up. Sorry the lighting is bad. We were kind of at the end of the day and the only light I had was hanging from the ceiling. But I thought it turned out fun. Let me know what you think. So now for a quick wrap up. Again, a look at those little flowers made from the egg cartons and the plastic shopping bag. I think it would be fun to try some other colors, maybe even in fall where you could do the black paint in the center with the toothpick. Let me know if you've ever tried these too. I'd be curious to know how they turned out. And again, a last look at our heart doily. So I just want to say thank you for hanging out with me today. I will see you next time.